Hey Planet Earth, Untamed Druid again. This video is going to be a little more free-flowing. I don't really have anything written down for this one, and it's not going to be as centrally focused on numerology, more of a um, like a real-world video. Me talking about things that are going on in the real world. So basically, where I'd like to start with is China, and not really go into my own personal opinion about the situation, but really this tendency, we keep seeing with, there's cancel culture, people being shut down for saying what they believe. There's this trend where, we're trying to be anti-racist, but we're infusing in that, or what is present in this push to not be racist is implicit pandering to people. So like there's only this push so far as we see. There's this Black Lives Matter movement and Stop Asian Hate, but there's no attention drawn to the Uyghurs that are in detention camps in China currently, or the fact that other Asian countries, China included, use child workers. So I'm not even going to say my opinion. Those are things that are documented, that any person interested in looking at anything can look up. So it's not, this is not my opinion. These are, what we like to call in the world facts. These are things. Are there Uyghurs in China? Yes. Now, was it okay when the United States put Japanese Americans in internment camps during World War II? My grandfather was at Pearl Harbor. He was there when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and regardless of that, I would say no. There's no justification for keeping people in internment camps, especially just races of people, because you're like, we're fighting the Japs, so just put them all in one place. All these Uyghurs, they're not complying with our single child policy, and they're standing up and being putting pride in their religion before the state. We have to shut that down. There's no, again, none of this is my opinion. If I was telling you my opinion, you'd know it. These are all just independent, actual facts about the situation. So it's like looking at those things. If you're interpreting what I'm saying right now as this is my opinion, it's more of, I guess I'm kind of painting the picture in a way where somebody explained to me how you can come to a different conclusion, basically. Yeah, I'll just stop there. And then, on from China, they don't need to spend the whole day talking about the same thing. We've got Black Lives Matter, taking over, basically like the government's fully feeding into the concept of Black Lives Matter, which is, not a bad concept. Of course, Black Lives Matter, and we need to, protect any overwhelmingly disproportionately affected groups in basically all scenarios. But the rioting and the burning of Portland buildings and the 800+% murder rate of Portland, and all of these things they're all directly tied to Black Lives Matter or Antifa, protests, which Antifa generally will ride on the backs of Black Lives Matter, I believe in Black Lives Matter. It's a legitimate movement, because just how upset people get when you see a sign that says Black Lives Matter. It's just like, well, no, it's important to have that because people get upset about it. So we can't just get rid of it. There's no reason to get rid of it. Just forcing this conversation, it keeps people involved. So, I don't even disagree with, the term Black Lives Matter or anything like that. It's more, these Antifa types, or these people that are harassing people in the street, shooting people, shooting innocent people, holding restaurants, like people sitting in a restaurant and calling them racist if they don't, do whatever you tell them to do. And, all of these extremists that are coming out of the woodwork, there's no real way in my mind to justify that action, because, if you're going to call something fascist or anti-fascist, what, the definition of fascism is just people coming together to secure and embolden national identity and, race identity. So, that's just being a pro wherever you're from. That's being a fascist, identifying with where you come from instead of just existing, and then, fascism's tied in with, Nazi Germany and all of these different things. So all of these terms get conflated. So, not to go much further into that, but like just the idea that, so the idea of being Antifa or anti-fascist, if you're taking it from that literal, like what the word fascist means is to be, pro being from a specific place and pro national unity and strength and, individual nationhood. If you're Antifa, that's, based on that definition, that means you're anti-national identity, which means you're pro-global identity, which is fine. It's implying that that's wrong. It's like we're all children of the world. We're not just from where we're from. Michigan is connected to, Thailand, because we're all touching on the earth, so it doesn't matter. We all are citizens of the earth. So being anti-fascist, and even in that way makes sense. But as soon as you're, actively taking violence against people or actively forcing your will on people, it's just like, well, I think what most people are thinking of when they're thinking of anti-fascist, they're not looking up the dictionary definition of what fascist means. They're assuming fascist means you're going to, force people to bow down to your will. That's kind of implied. It's not necessarily accurate, but, when you say you're anti-fascist, it sounds like you're trying to fight the forces that are dictating us and telling us how to live our lives. And then you go and literally do that exact same thing. So, not that there's anything wrong with being anti-fascist, but, there is something wrong, and there has to be something wrong, with violence in any case ever, because as soon as you're saying this violence is okay and that violence isn't okay, you're creating this unstable land where, people have to guess if it's okay, and sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not. And, the ground can shift at any point, and, the rug can be pulled out from underneath you, and then you're fucking flat on your ass and you don't belong to a group anymore, so there's it seems to be how these types like to engage. They don't like to give people a chance to not fight. It's like, well, take a step back. If what we really want is for everyone to prosper, I don't have to do what you're telling me to do. We just have to work on everybody prospering, by having effective laws and making sure, people can get the resources that they need. And, but taking violence against someone to, justify your position, regardless of position, regardless of what I'm saying, if the only way I can get people to listen to me or pay attention is by being violent or attacking someone, it's like, oh, whoa, I didn't know that no one, would actually take that seriously. Like, it's like you being violent makes you wrong. It's not that you're wrong inherently, because there's different people with different experiences and different, you know, different points of view, so it's like we can fully disagree. We can disagree on every single thing, and still both be humans and still kind of try to come together to reach some middle ground where we, whoa, out of focus. What's going on, camera? There we go. We can come together. I said that last video, so or my video 10 of the numerology introductory series. Disgusting. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's this perverse idea that we can, be people that are virtuous and pro-justice, and all of this stuff, and then, be like, but you can be violent towards this whatever group of people that we're just not going to protect the rights of, and, on the face, it acknowledges, like people are physical, people are violent, and, people just are like that, and it just gives you a boogeyman, go, you can be mean to that person, you can beat them up, you can, you can steal from them, and it's just like, in that is implied, if you disagree with us, you can get fucked. And, that's, to me, it might not be fascist, but it's a way of being that really shuts down actual open intercourse or intercourse. It shuts down actual discourse, it makes people pretend like they, think or whatever, believe a certain thing, and then we're just like suppressing, people's actual intents, because some people think some crazy stuff, and, not letting that person talk about it and be either, allowing them to say it out loud for the first time, or, anything like that. Like this threat of violence, it escalates everything, because it's just like, well, why would I listen to you if you're going to act violently towards me? Why would I respect you? Why would I respect anything that you're saying? Why would I respect your opinion? Why would, if you're someone who constantly deals with police harassment, why would you listen to somebody who says, no, there's nothing wrong with police, and if, black people would just be more respect, like, if you don't understand why someone would lose, why you would lose people, if you can't get that, that's basic, manners, when you're talking to somebody, you don't reduce people to these caricatures, where it's, oh, if black people, no. Don't put blame on a group of people if all black people would just be more respectful. It's like, how could you know anything less, to make a comment like that, that you can just paint this whole group of people with this huge single stroke, and they're unrespectful. It's like, what? You can't actually have any experience interacting with people of color. Like, as soon as you interact with somebody that doesn't look like you realize, oh, hey, we're all exactly the same, and there's just different ways things manifest. And like, if you haven't gotten to that point, I don't know really where else you can go. Like, there's no way forward. There's no way to be pro, people of color and not acknowledge that we're all exactly the same. And as soon as you do that, the idea of Black Lives Matter is working towards the point when racism doesn't exist. And how are we going to get rid of racism? By telling a certain race that they're bad for being that race, and, and telling us to acknowledge history. And, it's like, white people are bad because in the past 400 years of American history, slavery was present. And, it's like, well, yes, 100%, not going to take anything away from that. It's just, in the grand scheme of things, any civilization that attacked other civilizations generally had slaves, because they would either just massacre everybody that they attacked, or they would take slaves from whoever they attacked. So, Native Americans had slaves, and you know, everybody had slaves. Southern Americans, Latin Americans, Southern American. That's not what I meant. But yeah, they had the South, slaves in the South. There's Chinese slaves currently. Asian slaves currently. So it's just like, yeah, if you're against slavery, I agree with you. There are currently slaves in China. Go ahead and have whatever opinion you want, but if you want to be consistent, you have to disapprove of slavery every time it rears its head. And if it's rearing its head in China, the to be consistent means China's bad because they have slaves. Don't have slaves and you're not bad. Don't put people in internment camps because that makes you bad. It's not, you can't be a good person. Oh, but I just have these people, kept in internment camps. It's like, well, then it's fine to keep people in internment camps. So then, there was nothing wrong with keeping Japanese people in internment camps. And as we've already said, you can think that, but it's going to really limit your effectiveness. Because at any time, if there's an out group, you could say, yeah, you can just throw them in an internment camp. So that's the problem with this kind of dualistic thinking. We can be violent against the people that disagree with us, and it's just like, yeah, but what if, the situation changes, time, it still exists, so we go forward 10 years. Do you still disagree with the exact same people? And when you say no, because you haven't seen those people in 7 years, you'll realize, oh, hey, life is about accrual of experience. And just because, I can see that things around me are shitty, doesn't mean that just demanding that I get what I want and I get my way, and that I don't have to know anything about history, and that I can be completely detached from reality, and I can talk about how, colonization exists. Well, if you want to talk about colonization, if you believe that black people, were the original people, then black people colonized the entire world. And then wherever white people came from, then they did it too. So, it's just like, it depends on what kind of conversation you want to have, because I'm not trying to disempower black people. So I'm not trying to say anything that's of inconsistencies. It's not about that. It's just about, realizing, a black person can punch a black person, a white person can punch a white person, and any combination of that, any combination of racial conflict is possible, because we all exist in this world where conflict is possible. So, if you're going to use race to justify it, I disagree with you strongly. Because I think that, there's nothing that could make less sense, of, the ability of somebody is determined by their skin color, that is, has any bearing at all on their ability as a person to learn. I think that, you could go with, the different, animal breeds, theory, where, there's white, tigers, snow tigers that are, better at, white, because they're better for snow camouflage. And then there's Bengal tigers and Siberian tigers that, camouflage with their stripes. And, there's difference in size, there's difference in speed and running ability, strength, all of those things, because they're all variations of basically the same animal that exists in different geographical locations. So it's like, even all of those varying physical forms, it doesn't stop, a tiger from being a tiger. If it's a white tiger and an orange tiger, it's still a tiger, and they both exist, so being like, oh, but you're a white tiger, so difference. It's like, that doesn't exist, it's a different type of animal. What are you talking about? Like, well, there's no ground there. You're just like, oh, well, you're less than, it's like holding on to this old racist, ideology that, black people were less. And it's just like, well, no, that just means that you're stuck in the past. We're moving on beyond that. Black people are not less. Hispanic people are not less. Asian people are not less. Nobody is less than anybody. We're all different. Yeah. If we were all exactly the same, then what the fuck would we be talking about? So yeah, we're all different. But, if that's going to stop us from treating each other with respect and dignity, then why would you treat anyone with respect or dignity? Besides because they're in your group, well, then that means that, right, and that would be fascist, and that would be what I am against. So these people that are saying that they're anti-fascist, they're actively being fascist for their group, so it's just like they're taking one definition and then attacking that, not realizing that they are fulfilling that definition. So it's just like, well, why would anyone take you seriously? It's like you have to be consistent, because otherwise you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And no one, there's no ground to actually listen to you, because you immediately go against what you just said. So it's like, well, and generally when I see, essentially liberal types, or I don't want to participate in the paradigm, because it's not necessarily liberals, it's not necessarily conservatives, but people are struggling to interact nowadays, and they'll make such biased, like obviously biased comments, and not understand. It's like they never went to basic logic class. I guess I took logic class in college, and I dropped out of college, but I went to logic class when I was in college, and then I went to a couple classes with my ex, an ex I used to date. So, just sitting in a logic class, you just understanding how to be consistent and have the same point of view the entire time that you're having, a conversation, and not, tripping over your own feet because you're just going for whatever supports your side. It's a really hard thing to get out of, because it's like, well, why wouldn't I want to always benefit my side? And it's not that you don't want to benefit your side, but understand that we all exist on the same side, and that this division, this divide and conquer, is falsely implanted in our minds, because we're constantly looking for somebody who's causing the trouble in the world around us, instead of assuming that any trouble that comes our way is our own personal fault. And that's a lot of responsibility. And obviously sometimes there's outside forces that cause things to happen to us, but just taking the stance of anything that happens to me I can deal with, because I'm self-responsible. Even if that means you have to experience horrible, atrocities, at least you're a person of virtue. At least you're somebody who makes sense. You make consistent sense. And if you were out of that situation, and in a different situation, you would be a key, vital member of whatever society you were in, even though you've been excommunicated. But when you can't make a consistent point, I don't know that you can do, basic intelligence work. I think you might be able to work at, anywhere doing physical work. Anybody can do that. But I think that, if you can't have a consistent point of view, then you're encouraging people to not take you seriously as a person, because that's what indicates to people that you know what you're talking about, because you can speak consistently from the same point of view, and people can hold you to account for having that point of view, and you can let people in on why you think that, and then we can have a further discussion from there about why there's other opinions or anything. But if you're just like, no, I didn't believe that, oh, I didn't say that, no, don't get mad at me, don't hold me accountable, it's like, well, yeah, no one's gonna take you seriously, sorry bud, like that's the way that goes. So and then I keep reading, like, on Twitter. Of course, I should probably get off Twitter, but just the people are posting, like, I think it was Lockheed Martin puts people through white privilege training. And I think that I look through it, and there's some good stuff in there. People need to be aware of privilege. I definitely believe privilege exists. Um, white privilege, I think, is just a manifestation of privilege. So of course, white privilege exists. Um, but reading some of these whatever they are, I don't know, manifestos of like what it is to be privileged, or what white privilege means. Some of their descriptions of what it means is it's there's assumptions built into them, and there's these fears that people would have are being used to condition. They're being introduced as like things you have to consider, even though it's just like, well, you have to consider my emotions. And they're like, no, 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 we don't have to do that. What you have to do is consider the emotions of your, fellow, people of color, coworkers, or women coworkers. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to ignore my fellow workers, like, just basic, I can't not listen to somebody if they're talking to me, and being mean to somebody and not giving them the time of day, just doesn't register with me. So, um, yeah, I don't really get it in that way, but there's like this. It, it's a list. Let me look it up once. Now, I'm not going to read through all of these, but like the first one, if I need to move, I can be pretty sure that I will be able to rent or purchase affordable housing where I want to live. You know, Maybe I'm not white, but that doesn't apply to me, and that's a white privilege statement. So it's there's some implicit bias in there, assuming that a white person is a person that can afford to do these things. And it's like, well, if you're a white person and you can't afford to do those things, how do you relate to it? So it's like, well, that doesn't apply to me. Like, that specifically does not apply to me. Um, I can go shopping without being harassed, followed, or suspected of wanting to steal something. People follow me around all the time. I'm harassed constantly. People call me a fucking faggot hippie just because. So, I don't know these people. I just walk by them and they say that. So, again, does not apply to me. When I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my race made what it is. And again, like, that's participating in this completely erroneous understanding of what history is, because it's just like, again, if you look into it, all like China exists over there, and India exists over there, and Ethiopia exists over there, So all of those places were extremely civilized thousands of years ago, and they were all people of color, So it's just a false statement to believe to believe this, what they're teaching. They're saying that it's a white privilege statement to be able to be told about our national heritage and about civilization. I'm shown that people of my race made it what it is. You can, that's just, it doesn't hold any water. It's got a huge hole in it, and it's just like, yeah, if you stop within the past 300 years, if that's all the time span you're looking at, yes, 110%. But if you have any greater capacity to look beyond the immediate past, then you're wrong. And if you can't acknowledge that, I'm not sure what to do about that, because it's just like, yeah, but what about all of time before the specific time that you're talking about, where what you're saying doesn't apply. So, it's like, once we get to that, it's like, yeah, I guess you're right in this kind of way where you just want to be right, but it's like in the taking everything into consideration, all that has ever existed, you're wrong. So it's just, it's hard to tell people that they're wrong, unless you know that you're right, because it's not that I'm trying to harass people. It's, again, you just have to be able to be consistent, and you have to be able to apply what you believe infinitely in both directions. So you can't change what you believe. Oh, I used to be against gay marriage, Joe Biden, but now I'm pro gay marriage because it fits my political. In 2008 he was saying that like he doesn't like gay people, he thinks it's an abomination. So 13 years ago, yeah, okay. You don't get to just flip flop because, oh, oops, I updated myself. Like, geez, you know, gay people should obviously have rights. Lesbians should obviously have rights. It sucks that I have to say that. Asexual people should obviously have rights. Anybody a part of the LGBTQ community, I include myself in the LGBTQ community, should have rights. We should be guaranteed to not feel negatively influenced by the world around us because of the way that we prefer to exist, So, yeah, I don't know. Blah, 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 blah. So, anyway, I don't question whether my child will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence and importance of their race. Question. Okay, I'm not sure really an example of that, but my voice is usually heard in a group in which I am the only member of my race. I mean, I usually don't interact in group settings, so, but I mean, I would talk to black people if that's what that means. I'm not even sure. I can dismiss another's voice with little or no consequence when he or she is the only member of their group. I mean, again, personally, I cannot do that. I know that some people can do that, and this definitely applies to certain people, but like, if somebody's speaking or making noise, I pay full attention to them because I cannot not do that. So, like, it to me, again, does not apply. I can go into a hairdresser or barber shop and find someone who can cut my hair. Yeah, I guess. Whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color to support my appearance of financial reliability. So, no. Banks hate me, They, they'll ask me for my ID a lot. I was a gardener for about 5 years, so, I'm walking around dirty, as shit, and, going to bars and stuff, and people would, just keep an eye on me, making sure I'm not sneaking drinks, and, I'd pay with a credit card, and I'd you know, get like an expensive dinner and shit, and people are like, oh, we thought you were, going to be a vagabond homeless person. And it's just like, right, because you're just assuming based on what I look like, so, that's participating in the mentality of racism, even though you're not targeting me because of my race. You're specifically like, look what this person looks like, keep an eye on him. So that shit happens to me all the time. And it's not because of my race. It's because of literally how I exist. So, that's where I get upset, because it's like a lot of this stuff does not apply to me in any way, like in any detectable way at all, because I'm actively ostracized. So it's like, but I am white, so how do I talk about this? Well, this is how I'm talking about it. I do not have to educate my children to be aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical safety. See, now there's stuff like this in here, which is so important, because to me, that's a mind shatterer, like you have to teach your kids, hey, that cop might just shoot you if you're doing the wrong thing. Like, that makes me like, whoa, like, this shit is real. You can't be making jokes about this when you're teaching your children that. Like, yeah, imagine that life. Like, and it's people's life every day. So it's just, it's so, to me, this has to be put in people's faces because it's a part of reality. So, like, to me, it's like, see, you can't just say that white privilege training isn't all useless, but then they like put in all this other stuff that it's like, yeah, but you're talking about a very specific white person, that like, you're just talking about a successful person and you're just putting the word white. in instead of successful. And it's like, yeah, that's really marginalizing. Like, you know, you're trying to hold down successful people, but you don't want to say successful people, so you're just saying white people. And it's this whole ugly thing. It's like, we, support that, like, I don't. Anyway, I won't go through all of them. My chief worries about my children do not concern others' attitude towards their race. Again, depends on the situation. If you live in a black neighborhood, I can express my views in public without creating damaging perceptions of my race. Yeah, see, like that. Like, it's like participating in that. If a black person does something, it represents all black people. And it's like, in this, it's like, it's saying that is true. If a black person does something, it represents all black people. And it's like, well, no, that's not true. Even though people will act like it's true. No, that's not true. Just because, one black person did something doesn't mean that all black people do that. It's just simple. It's like, why would you, what? That's what a stereotype is. So that's obviously stereotypical, and stereotypes are nothing but shorthanded ways to talk about things. So it's like, if you want to talk about things accurately, you can't be using shorthanded ways to talk about things. So you got to be accurate and saying, all black people need to control what they do to control the perception of their race. It's like, well, what about successful black people? Successful black people don't exist. How do they not affect the entire mentality of the race? Why isn't every black person super successful because black successful people exist? Because that's not how it works. Because they're separate people, and just because they have the same skin color doesn't mean that they're intrinsically connected at the hip. And if you do something that, and I did that, it's like, no, that's child thinking. That's literally, you're a child if you think like that. So I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. I mean, I guess that's a thing that happens to people. I've never really noticed it. So if that is something that happens, fuck that. Credit to my race. You're one of the positive blacks. Man, that would suck. Like, shit. And it's just like, man, just even thinking about the fact that exists, it's like, that's why this stuff's important. So it's hard to really throw it all out, baby with a bathwater style. I'm never asked or expected to speak for all people of my racial group. I mean, maybe. I just think that I realize that people do that, and I've realized that one, but I just don't think that should be, no one should be asked or expected to speak for all the people of their racial group. So it's like, doing that is wrong, so, there's no excuse to do that, like, I can worry about racism without being seen as self-interested or self-seeking. So, yeah, to me, I marry the concept of racism onto the fact that people do that thing where they always have to have a boogeyman. So, it's easy for it to be applied to race because, there's obviously this group of people that have different skin color, they stand out. So that's a justification for, being racist. But then me specifically as a white person, I'm not specifically establishment based. I'm not necessarily pro the way that things are right now. I'm not necessarily, I'm not necessarily a stereotypical white person by any means of, any stretch of the imagination. So to say that I don't have to worry about racism to not seem selfish, I marry the idea of racism onto the fact that I am constantly ostracized as someone who is not black or Hispanic or any of, any person. I am not a person of color, and I constantly receive negative attention all the time. And, to me, fighting racism stands for fighting the fact that people do that. The fact that people will judge you based on what you look like, and it's like, to me, that's what racism is, judging someone based on what they look like. And it's like, obviously racism is basing what someone's capable of on their skin color, but it's just like, right, and your skin color is just another way to say what you look like. If you look black because you are black, we're going to treat you like this. If you look like a homeless person, people say I look like a homeless person, we're going to treat you like this. And it's like, well, I'm not a homeless person. You're just being, it's not racist, but it's like you're just being discriminatory in a way where you're pointlessly excluding me, pointlessly for no reason. And people will just do that. And to me, that's why we need to fight racism, because it's like, if I, as an outlying white person, constantly also face discrimination, it's like, well, if we get rid of racism, what happens? Does it still exist? Because everybody's just judging each other based on what you look like. So it's like, that is, where I stand on that question. I don't know. I'm just really ranting here, but thanks for sticking with me if you're still here. I do not need to ask if each negative episode or situation I experience has racial overtones. Yeah, I guess that's true. My competence is assumed unless I prove otherwise. That's the last one. And it's just like, see, that's what I mean. It's this, what they're pushing is this false narrative where white people equals successful person and black person equals not successful person. And it's like, and I don't believe in that at all. And that's the ideology that they're pushing, that they're saying that white people have inherently all of these benefits, just because they're white. And it's like, well, successful white people that exist, but what about bad white people? What about white people that fail to succeed in life? Like, what about those people? Because none of this applies to them. So it's just like, you're talking about a specific group of people, but you're just saying white people, and it's like, it's not white people. It's you're targeting successful people without saying the word successful so that people will support what you're saying. Because we can't say we need to get rid of all of these successful people, but if you're saying we need to make it so that white people are less racist, it's like, how can you disagree with that? So you can't. So it just prevents a conversation from happening. And it's just like, well, the conversation I'm trying to have is, if you're really interested in fixing race relations, why do you constantly bring up race and constantly reinforce that black people are less than white people, and constantly bring up the fact that, there's this huge issue and it's all white people oppressing black people's fault? It's like, well, that takes all responsibility away from, black people. That means black people have no control over their lives, and they're completely controlled by white people. And that's the narrative that they're pushing. And it's just like, if you believe that, it's probably because that's what's being pushed by the schools, by Twitter. It's not that you can't believe that. It's just that the more knowledge you gain about the world, the more you understand that that is a manifestation of how to gaslight people into doing what you want. And if you're not willing to look at it, you'll never understand it. But like, if you are willing to have actual knowledge about things, once you see how everything is pitting us against each other, like the language used in this fucking whatever I just read to you, it's so charged that it's supposed to make you feel bad. And it's like, yes, I should feel bad about some of this stuff. But then some of the things, it's just like, well, it's just confusing because I don't know who it applies to. It applies to like 6 people I can think of, and it's like, I don't know. So if we're gonna work towards a better world, um, you know, implying that, a black person can't do something because they're black, we have to move on. That's not, no, you're wrong. If that black person can't do something, it's because that black person can't do something. It's not because they're black. That Asian person can't do something, it's probably because they can't do it. And you might want to be like, oh, the Asians can't drive. Well, or that person can't drive. Have you ever seen Tokyo Drift? Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to have that opinion and know that Tokyo Drift exists. It's just like, so all of these shorthand, stereotypes and just being racist like that, it's not how we build a better future. And, if you actively participate in just stereotyping anybody, if you stereotype white people into this, all white people do this, it's like the white people jokes, like white people will call this a sandwich and it's just mayonnaise on a piece of bread. Like, what if I'm white and don't do that? You're now wrong, and you're actively being wrong, and you're spreading this idea, and it's just like, well, how do you like it when people are racist against you? And it's like, I don't like it. So do you want people to continue to be racist against you, or do you want to stop having race be an issue? And we can actually talk about things and work on things, and we get to decide that, living our lives. But like, actively making incorrect, like, not funny jokes that are just poking at the fact that white people can be made fun of now, like making those kinds of jokes, it's just like, well, yeah, okay, I can make an off-color joke about, some race of people, and like everybody will get up in arms. So it's like, right, so just, again, be consistent. Don't make fun of white people because, because they're white. Make fun of white people because they're goofy individuals, just like everybody else is. And, focus on the individual instead of, reducing everybody to their group based on their skin color. Because, like, there's white people in South America. The Germans moved to South America after the Nazis were destroyed. So, like, there's white people everywhere. There's black people everywhere. If you look into things like Atlantis, and Ignatius Donnelly, if you look at his ethnographic reports, there's white people, black people, red people, yellow people, all over the world, mixed in with all of these different groups, even in Africa, even in North America, so it's just like, really, the more, like, if you actually go in and you go to the past and you find what these people were saying, the non-racist people of the past. And Ignatius Donnelly kind of pushes the boundary a little bit, but like, if somebody, from the 1800s who isn't racist is saying something, that person needs to be listened to, because they're so far ahead of their time that the constrictures that like limit our ability to, have free knowledge don't exist in the 1800s. If you got a book printed, it said what it said. Who knows what your sources are and stuff like that. But like, if there's no reason to lie. You're trying to be taken seriously. He was a U.S. congressman. He's not just going to be posting, his opinion on Twitter. He puts his life into this because this is all he exists for. There is no other, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, you couldn't get by on faking it, especially in the public sphere, and he's so widely condemned. It's just like, once you read his Atlantis book, it's pretty eye-opening, because it's just like, well, all he's saying is that, like, racism has no justification, and I mean, he makes the one point that he says that black people were the unaffected group of people in the building of civilization, that white people, red people, and yellow people built civilization, and it's, again, just reducing people to those types. And it's like, That's how he's racist, because he still lets that be in his mind. And it's just like, again, if you know anything, obviously that's not true. So it's like, even in someone who is so revolutionary and ahead of their time, racism is still implicit. Why? Because of that boogeyman utilitarian bias. It's just, I can't just fully be against racism, so I have to kind of sneak it in there. Oh well, because I want to be taken seriously. Well, at this point, we're no longer in the 1800s. I don't believe in racism at all as a qualifier for anything. If you're a black person, if you're a red person, if you're a yellow person, if you're a blue person, if you're a green person, I don't care. Let's get together and make some stuff. Let's get together and have some conversations. Doesn't matter. We're trying to move forward and create this world utopia where we're not being told what to do by these government powers that, only want us to fight with each other and stay poor and have nothing. And, I disagree with that. If you agree with me, I would love to be in conversation with you. So if you guys like the video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. Thanks for listening to me rant for 50 minutes, and I will catch y'all on the flip flop later.